Welcome back to today's episode of Faith in Focus. I want to ask you an incredible honest question. What do you do when you're down to your last drop? Maybe it's not physical food. Maybe it's the last drop of your emotional reserve. You're looking at your bank account, your patience with your kids, your energy for that failing project, or your faith in a situation that just won't change. And you've done the math. The math says you are running out. If that is where you're standing right now, you are in the perfect neighborhood for a miracle. I'm your host, Rebecca, and today we journey into the book of 1 Kings chapter 17. And we're looking at a story that I like to call a handful of faith. It's the story of a desperate, unnamed widow in a town called Zarephath, a brutal famine, and a bold prophet named Elijah, and the terrifying space between a scarcity mindset and a supernatural breakthrough. The land of Israel is bone dry. Israel is under a massive drought because of their spiritual compromise. And God tells the prophet Elijah to go to a pagan territory, Zarephath, and says, I have commanded the widow there to provide for you. Now, if you are Elijah, you're probably thinking a provider means someone with abundance. But when he arrives at the city gate, he finds a woman gathering sticks. He asks her for a little water and a piece of bread. Listen to her response in verse 12. It is heartbreakingly raw. And she said, As the Lord thy God liveth, I have not a cake, but an handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. She wasn't planning her tomorrow or next week. She was preparing her last meal. She had normalized her defeat. She looked at her reality and said, This handful is all I have left, and then it's over. But look at what Elijah says next. It sounds almost selfish on the surface, but it's actually a spiritual test. He told her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me thereof a little cake first, and bring it out to me. And after, make for thee and for thy son. God asked her for her first when she's at her last. Why? Because God wasn't trying to take her food. He was trying to take her fear. He was asking her to trade her visible, measurable scarcity for the invisible, immeasurable supply. He was asking her to risk her survival on a single word of promise. And here is the pivot point of the entire text. She goes and does exactly what Elijah said. Think about the walk from the city gate back to her kitchen. She had to pour out the very last drop of oil. She had to scrape the bottom of the flour bin. Every logical, self-preserving instinct in her must have been screaming, What are you doing? You're giving away your tiny moment? But she didn't live by logic. She moved by a handful of faith. And look at the result in verse 16. And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of the Lord, which is spake by Elijah. Every single day after that, she went to the barrel, and there was just enough flour for that day. She went to the jar, and there was just enough oil for that day. God didn't give her a warehouse full of grain all at once. He gave her a daily rhythm of reliance. To you, my listeners, I want to bring this right to your doorstep. What is the handful you are holding on to tightly today because you're terrified that if you let it go, you have nothing left? Our handful is often born out of survival. It is that exhausting side hustle we won't quit because inflation is real. It is that toxic job we tolerate because at least I have a job. It is the little savings we hoard because we're scared of what tomorrow looks like. But notice this, the widow of Zarephath was in a literal famine, economic collapse at its peak, and God still asked her to trust Him with her last meal. God isn't blind to your bills, but He is asking, will you rely on your gripping hands or His open ones? God is whispering the same thing to you that Elijah whispered to that widow. Do not fear. Give it to me first. A handful of flour in your hand is just the final meal, but a handful of flour placed in God's hands becomes an endless supply. The miracle doesn't happen while you are hoarding the little you have. The miracle happens in the release. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If this message spoke to that dry place in your life today, do me a favor. Share it with someone who is running on empty right now. Hit the subscribe button, leave us a review, and remember, trust God with your first and watch what He does with your last. Until next time, keep working by faith.